Fear Files. 5 true horror stories from the Pacific Northwest. There is a moment, right before something terrible happens, when the world goes quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not the quiet of a Sunday morning or a mountain lake at dawn. A different kind of quiet. The kind where the birds stop. The kind where the air feels wrong. The kind your body recognizes before your brain does. In the Pacific Northwest, that quiet has a shape. It moves like fog through pine trees. It smells like rain on cold earth. It settles over small towns in the middle of the night when everyone is asleep and no one is watching. Tonight, 9 real people experienced that quiet, and none of them walked away unchanged. Tell us right now, what city are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Drop it below. We read every single one. Story 1 of 5, The Faceless Thing in the Fog. What would it take for you to abandon a 6-month lease, leave your belongings behind, and drive away from a rental property at 2 a.m. without looking back? For a 24-year-old equipment operator from Seattle, the answer was 4 nights. 4 nights of watching something walk out of the forest behind his cottage and get closer, and closer, and closer. On the 4th night, it was standing right outside his back door, and he could finally see its face. Except it didn't have one. He had moved to the town in March of 2024, population 600. 1 general store, a diner, a post office, a bar. The kind of place where every face becomes familiar within a week and outsiders are noticed immediately. He had taken the job at the logging company for the money. Better pay than anything Seattle could offer at his level. The cottage sat on 2 acres at the edge of town, dense rainforest pressing in from behind. The landlord, a man named Patterson, showed him around in 10 minutes flat. Keys on the counter, a number to call, and he was gone. Looking back, the tenant says he realizes now that Patterson never lingered, never stayed longer than necessary, never looked toward the forest behind the property. The first week was ordinary, quiet, the kind of quiet you have to adjust to when you come from a city. He was getting used to it. Then the fog started. Every single evening, without exception, a thick fog rolled in from the forest at approximately 9:45 p.m. Not a light mist, a dense, swallowing fog that moved through the trees like something alive, something deliberate. It was on the 10th night that he first saw the figure, standing at the tree line, 50 yards from the house, perfectly still. He told himself, a deer, an elk, a trick of the fog. He went back to cooking dinner. The second night, the figure had moved. 20 feet to the left, still motionless, still facing the house. He grabbed a flashlight, shone it through the window. The fog swallowed the beam whole. The third night, it was no longer at the tree line. It was standing in the middle of his backyard, 30 feet from the house, and now he could see it clearly enough to feel sick. 7 feet tall, at minimum. Thin, the kind of thin that doesn't look like starvation. It looks like a person has been stretched, arms hanging past where knees should be, fingers with too many joints, clothes like old rags hanging off a frame that barely resembled a human body. He loaded his hunting rifle. When he came back to the window, it was gone. He sat in his living room until sunrise, rifle across his lap, checking every window every few minutes. He had gone to the general store the next morning, asked the woman behind the counter, a local named Martha, if there had been reports of trespassers, strange incidents, anything unusual. When he told her he was renting the Patterson cottage, she went white. She told him to talk to Mr. Patterson, refused to say another word, practically pushed him out of the store. Patterson never returned his calls. On the 4th night, he did not have to go looking for it. He walked into his living room and it was already there, standing directly outside the back door. close enough that he could see every detail through the glass. The face was smooth, blank, not dark, not shadowed, smooth and pale and featureless, like someone had taken a human face and simply erased it. He watched it tilt its head slowly, the way a dog does when it hears a strange sound. Then it raised one hand, fingers too long, bending in too many places, and pressed it flat against the glass. And then it pressed its blank, featureless face against the door. He ran. Keys, phone, wallet, front door, truck. He did not stop until he reached the motel. The next morning, he packed his belongings and drove to the library before leaving town. 2 hours in the archives. Between 1971 and 1978, 11 people disappeared from that town, all in May, all on foggy nights. No bodies, no evidence, nothing. And in 2015, a man rented the Patterson cottage and vanished after 3 weeks. Truck still in the driveway, belongings still inside. Patterson didn't argue when he broke the lease, just said, "Okay," and hung up. The cottage is still there. Patterson still rents it. The fog still rolls in at 9:45. Drop your city and the time you're watching this. And if something has ever stood outside your window in the dark, tell us what you saw. The blood trail that led nowhere. Saturday morning, a logging site 15 miles outside of a small Oregon town. A blue Ford F250 in the parking lot. Driver door wide open, engine off, battery completely dead, like the lights had been left on all night. And starting at the driver's side door, running in a dark, unmistakable line, a trail of blood, leading directly into the forest. Search and rescue followed it for 40 feet, and then it stopped. Not faded, not scattered. It simply stopped, as if whoever was bleeding had ceased to exist at that exact point in the trees. Kyle was 34 years old. He had worked for Cascade Timber Company for over a decade, one of their most experienced and dependable fallers. His co-workers described him as the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. He had a wife and 2 young children. When he missed the Friday night carpool, his co-workers drove to the site assuming he had caught a different ride. They found his truck. They called out his name. No response. Then they saw the blood. His wife came to the police station and sat with the dispatcher while search teams combed a 10-mile radius with tracking dogs and a state police helicopter. She asked the dispatcher over and over, "Have you found anything? Have you found anything?" For 3 days, the answer was no. On the 3rd day, a hiker called 911. He had found a body 12 miles from the logging site. But here is what breaks the logic of this case entirely. The body was found to the north of the logging site. The blood trail had gone south, 12 miles in the completely wrong direction. The medical examiner's report was even more disturbing. Kyle had died close to where the blood trail ended in the forest, not where his body was found. Based on the nature and volume of his wounds, he could not have walked or crawled to where he was discovered. He had been moved. Someone had killed Kyle inside that forest, and then, through 12 miles of dense Pacific Northwest wilderness, in the middle of the night, transported his body to a location in the opposite direction. No tire tracks, no drag marks, no evidence that any vehicle or person had entered that second location. Just a body placed there, as if dropped from the sky. The logging site's security camera captured Kyle arriving at 11 p.m. that Friday. He parked, he got out, he looked around. 90 seconds later, when the camera rotated back to that section of the lot, the door was hanging open and the trail was already leading to the trees. The figure in coveralls had vanished. State police identified 3 suspects matching the physical description. All 3 had worked in the area that week. All 3 fit the build. And all 3 had airtight alibis. One was at a bar until midnight, confirmed by the bartender and multiple witnesses. One was home with his family, wife and teenage daughter both confirmed. One was at his girlfriend's house, girlfriend and roommate both confirmed. Homes searched, vehicles searched, work lockers searched. Nothing. What justice looks like and doesn't. The case went cold after 2 months. Kyle's death was ruled a homicide. No arrests were ever made. His wife moved to California 6 months later with their 2 children. The dispatcher, who took the original call that Saturday morning, still works at the same desk. She still drives past the mill. She still sees those 3 cleared suspects at the gas station, at the grocery store, at the diner. Kyle's widow called her a month after moving to California. Her kids still have nightmares. They ask when the police are going to catch the person who hurt their dad. She did not know what to tell them. She still doesn't. Have you ever watched someone walk free when you just knew they were guilty? Tell us below. The hitchhiker who died 40 years ago. He picked her up 3 separate times over 8 months. Same woman, same location. Mile marker 47 on Highway 112 along the northern Washington coast. Same pale face with the same desperate look. Same faded jeans, same light blue jacket. Same destination, spoken in the same quiet voice. Mercy General Hospital. Please, as quickly as possible. He drove her there 3 times. She thanked him 3 times, and 3 times she walked around the corner of the building and simply ceased to exist. The first time was April of 2023. He was a long-haul trucker, 9 years on the road, ex-military, not the kind of man who picked up hitchhikers, but something about her seemed different. She looked like she genuinely needed help. She said almost nothing during the 15-minute drive, stared straight ahead. When he asked if she needed him to call someone, she shook her head. When they reached the hospital, she thanked him quietly and disappeared through the main entrance. He forgot about her until July. Same bend in the road, same woman, same clothing, same request. He asked if she remembered him. She didn't respond, just looked at him with those desperate pale eyes and repeated the request. He drove her there again. October, 3rd time. This time, he followed her on foot into the hospital parking lot. She walked to the front entrance, turned the corner of the building, and vanished. A flat wall, an empty lot, no doors, nowhere she could have gone. He went inside and asked the front desk clerk if they knew a woman matching her description. The clerk looked at him as if he was the strange one. He avoided Highway 112 for a month. When he finally had to drive it again in late November, he told himself he would not stop if he saw her. He would keep driving. She wasn't there. But something else was, a white memorial cross on the shoulder of the road, right at mile marker 47. He had driven this route dozens of times and never noticed it before. He pulled over, walked to it, read the small plaque in the beam of his phone's flashlight. Lily Nelson, 1962 to 1984, beloved daughter and sister, gone too soon, born in 1962, died in 1984. She was 22 years old. That was over 40 years ago. He stopped at a diner in the next town, asked an older waitress about Lily Nelson. She remembered. Everyone in that town from a certain generation remembered. Lily died on that curve on Highway 112 in November of 1984. She had been driving too fast, far too fast, because her mother was dying. She was trying to reach Mercy General Hospital before it was too late. She lost control on the bend at mile marker 47. She died instantly. Her mother died a few hours later, without ever knowing what had happened to her daughter. Mercy General Hospital was demolished in 2010. For 40 years, Lily has been standing at that mile marker, trying to reach a hospital that no longer exists, trying to get to a mother who has been gone for 4 decades. Other truckers have picked her up too, always at mile marker 47, always the same request. None of them could help her. He takes a route that adds 90 minutes to every drive now. He does not care. Have you ever passed a memorial cross and wondered about the story behind it? Tell us where you're watching from and what you believe about the people who can't move on. The town that erases your memory. She left Portland at 10 in the morning on a Saturday, heading to her parents' house on the northern Washington coast. A drive she had made dozens of times, 4.5 hours, door to door. She stopped for gas at approximately 4:15 p.m. When she walked back to her car, having been inside the station for what felt like 10 minutes, maybe 15, every clock she looked at read the same time, 6:47 p.m. Almost 3 hours had vanished. She had no memory of where they went. None, not a fragment, not a blur, just nothing. The town was called Havenbrook. Population 310, according to the sign at the edge of town. She had driven that stretch of Highway 101 dozens of times without ever noticing the exit. But it was there that day, clearly signed, clearly marked. The gas station was old-fashioned, 2 pumps, a small building with a man behind the counter, probably in his 60s, white-haired, face weathered from decades of coastal wind. He processed her credit card without a word, without eye contact, without the small talk that is practically mandatory at rural gas stations across America. She paid, she used the restroom, she walked back to her car, and then her phone said 6:47. She went back inside. She told the attendant she was confused about the time. His reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His face went pale. He stared at her with wide, almost frightened eyes, and he said, very quietly, "You need to leave right now. Do not come back here." Then he walked into the back room and did not return. That night at her parents' house, she could not sleep. She searched online for Havenbrook, Washington, and found an online forum dedicated to unexplained phenomena. She typed the town's name into the search bar. 40-plus posts, different users, different years, the same story, told over and over. They had all stopped in Havenbrook, for gas, for food, for directions. They had all lost between 3 and 5 hours. They all left with no memory of the gap. And almost every one of them had been told, urgently and without explanation, to leave and never come back. But here is where it gets stranger. Every single person who tried to return to Havenbrook afterward could not find it. The exit wasn't on the highway. The town wasn't visible from the road. GPS showed no results. Google Maps showed no results. Directory assistants had no listings. Havenbrook, Washington does not exist, except that it does. Because she still has the receipt. Havenbrook Gas and Service, Main Street, Havenbrook, WA. Dated May 11th, 2024 at 4:15 p.m. A physical object, proof of a place that cannot be found. She has tried everything. She drove back to that stretch of Highway 101 3 times, drove it slowly, watching every sign. The exit was not there. She tried hypnosis to recover the missing memories. It did not work. One researcher she found, someone who studies what he calls liminal spaces, places that exist at the edges of normal geography, told her that the people who stop in Havenbrook may actually experience those missing hours in full, consciously, actively, but that something removes those memories before they leave. Not erases, removes, deliberately, and that is the detail that keeps her awake. Because if those 3 hours were real, and she was conscious during them, then something happened to her in that town, something she cannot access, something her own mind is hiding from her. What if the reason the memories were taken is because what happened was too terrible to remember? What if her mind is protecting her from something she cannot afford to know? She has stopped driving Highway 101. She takes a route that adds an hour to every visit to her parents. Some exits she has decided. Have you ever lost time with no explanation? Ever passed through a place that felt like it existed outside of reality? Tell us. You may not be the only one. The voices beneath the radio station. He was a night maintenance technician at a small community radio station in rural Oregon. Population 600, the only station within a 50-mile radius. Been broadcasting since the 1940s. His job was simple. Come in at midnight, monitor the equipment, fix anything that broke, be gone by 8 in the morning. For the first 3 weeks, nothing unusual happened. Then, one night at 2:30 in the morning, he noticed activity on a frequency the station was not broadcasting on. He put on a pair of headphones, tuned in. The voices were speaking in reverse. When he played the recording backwards, he heard children singing nursery rhymes no one recognized. The phenomenon happened almost every night, always between 2 and 3 in the morning. Reversed voices, distorted music, occasionally knocking, scratching, and once, what sounded unmistakably like screaming. He reported it to his supervisor. A technician came out, spent hours checking the equipment, found nothing wrong, told him it was atmospheric interference, told him not to worry. He kept recording. He played everything backwards. The children's voices spoke in conversational fragments. He caught phrases that made him feel cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. It hurts. We cannot leave. Help us. One night, he went down to the basement to see if the signal was originating from the equipment stored there. Moving an old shelving unit away from the far wall, he found a door. It had not been on any floor plan he had seen. It was not locked. Behind it was a small room, 10 feet by 10 feet. Old broadcasting equipment from the 1940s or 50s. Microphone, control panel, transmitter. Everything covered in a thick layer of dust. Everything running, lights on, transmitter humming. In a basement where the electrical system had been disconnected years ago. On the control panel beside the microphone, a logbook. He opened it. The last entry was dated October 3rd, 1952. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, and the words stopped him cold. Final broadcast before shutdown. May God have mercy on us all. The signature beneath it was illegible. He went back upstairs and spent the rest of that shift researching the station's history. What he found explained everything, and made everything immeasurably worse. In 1952, a fire broke out in the basement of that building. 4 people died. The cause was never officially determined. The station was shut down for 2 years, renovated, and when it reopened, the basement was converted to storage. The 4 who died: Margaret Hayes, 32, Thomas Ridley, 41, Catherine Moore, 27, and Sarah Ridley, 9 years old, Thomas's daughter. She had been at the station that night because her mother was out of town. He went back down the next night with a tape recorder. He sat in that room for over an hour. At 2:30 in the morning, the equipment came to life, lights flashing on the control panel. The transmitter's hum growing louder. And then, through the speaker, voices, not backwards this time, clear, direct, human. A woman's voice. Is anyone there? Can anyone hear us? A man's voice. We have been trying to reach someone for so long. Please, if you can hear this, help us. And then a child's voice. Small, frightened, impossibly sad. It is so dark here. I want to go home. Please help us get out. He sat frozen, tape recorder running in his shaking hand, as the voices continued. The woman again. We are trapped here. The fire took us, but we cannot leave. We are still here in this place. We cannot get out. And then, abruptly, silence. The equipment went dark. The hum stopped. He called his supervisor at 3 in the morning. The building was investigated. The hidden room was found. The equipment was scheduled for removal. When workers pulled out the transmitter, they found a hollow space behind it in the wall, a compartment that had been sealed during the 1954 renovation. Inside it were 4 sets of human remains. Dental records confirmed: Margaret Hayes, Thomas Ridley, Catherine Moore, Sarah Ridley. During the fire in 1952, a section of wall had collapsed, trapping them in a space that was then sealed over during renovations. No one had known. For 71 years, their remains had been there, and for 71 years, they had been trying to tell someone. He was the first person who heard them. He was the one who finally listened. The station was demolished in April of 2024. The land is an empty lot now. He still has the recordings. He listens to them sometimes late at night and wonders if they found peace. He hopes they did. 5 stories, 5 real people, 5 encounters with something they could not explain, something that changed the way they see the world, the way they move through it, the way they sleep at night. The Pacific Northwest keeps its secrets the way old-growth forest keeps darkness, completely, quietly, without apology. There are things in those mountains, on those highways, beneath those small towns, that have no rational explanation. Things that have been there far longer than we have, and they are patient. The figure is still in those woods. The blood trail still leads nowhere. Lily is still standing at mile marker 47, waiting for a ride to a hospital that is gone. If these stories reached you, if one of them felt a little too close, leave your city and the time below. Tell us the true crime story from your corner of the world that never made national news. We read every comment, every single one. Subscribe to Hanuman Fear Files. Hit that notification bell. The next story drops soon, and it is worse than anything you heard tonight.
Don't miss the next terrifying tale. Subscribe to Hanuman Fear Files.